Hello, everybody, and happy day. My name is Susanna DeBaca, and I'm the president and CEO of Business Publications Corporation, which is the parent company of the Business Record, which presents Fearless. We are very excited to have you joining us here for this event in our 2022 Fearless Focus series. If you have not been to one of our events before, welcome. And for those who are returning, we're very excited to see you with us again here today. When we launched Fearless at the end of 2020, we knew that in addition to providing a weekly newsletter and other content, that we also wanted to create space for conversation and connection. So this year, we're hosting 3 virtual Fearless Focus events just like this, so that people from around the state can easily join these important discussions. Very, very powerful to have all of you here with us here today. We've got a great discussion planned for you, and our topic today, as you know, is confidence, or how to empower ourselves and the women we know to succeed in work and life. So why is confidence so critical? We know from research that women often lack confidence, and that can hold us back from advancing and achieving our goals. As I said in a recent Leading Fearlessly column in our Fearless newsletter, I certainly struggled with finding my own voice as a young woman starting out. I doubted my knowledge at times. I assumed that everybody else must know more than I did. But over time, with the encouragement of some of my colleagues, with good friends, and some success under my belt, I was able to gain confidence. So I am now very passionate about helping other women find their own voice as well. And that's what today is all about. Before we introduce our panelists and start the conversation, however, I would like to take a moment to welcome today's sponsor, Women Lead Change. Many of you know, I believe, that Women Lead Change is an organization dedicated to the development, advancement, and promotion of women, their organizations, and to impacting the economy and future workforce. We love working with Women Lead Change because we have goals that are very, very closely aligned, and we are very grateful for their support. I'm delighted to introduce Amy Eaton, who's the Director of Marketing and Strategic Development. Great to see you, Amy.
Thank you, Susanna. I will echo, we are so excited to be here at today's Fearless event and to sponsor and be a partner with all things Fearless with the Business Record. It's been a great partnership throughout these years. And as Susanna said, our mission really does align quite well. So we really focus on workforce development, but through a gender lens. All of our education is super tactical and focused on how we can advance women leaders across all levels of their career. And so many times we have this confidence issue come up. And so when we look to empower, educate, and inspire women through our educational opportunities, we hear some of the same things. We need confidence in asking for those stretch assignments to advance to the next level. We need confidence in sharing ideas in boardrooms where you might be the only there. We need confidence in negotiating wages and benefits and flexibility to make sure that you've got happy work-life integration. So I'm excited to share that throughout this fall, we've got some amazing opportunities, both virtual and in person, to continue our empowerment of all women across the state of Iowa. We've got a virtual workshop coming up in August, so everyone can attend that via Zoom on August 24th. We've also got our 2 fall conferences, Quad Cities Conference on October 6th, and the Central Iowa Conference on October 25th through the 26th. I'm excited to announce that Central Iowa Conference will be closed by a feature presentation from the founders of The Home Edit. Clea and Joanna will be here for an exclusive appearance here in Des Moines. So we've got tickets available for all of those opportunities. Again, I'm so glad to see how many people are joining in this conversation today. I hope you can take a nugget back and find some inspiration and some things to put in place in your workplace today. And we look forward to listening to the panel. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Amy. And thanks again to Women Lead Change. Your conferences sound fantastic. I missed those in-person opportunities and glad that you are back in full force now. Before I kick things over to business record editor Emily Barsky for the program, I do want to recognize our team for just a minute. Recently, about 2 weeks ago, at our National Industry Association Awards, the Business Record won several top awards, and Fearless won gold for best specialty newspaper in the country. Wow. So I want to say congratulations to Emily Barsky and to Emily Kestel for your leadership, for your commitment to excellence, and for making a difference in our community. Thank you so much, you guys. And now I'll turn it over to you, Emily Barsky.
All right. Well, thank you, Susanna, and hello, everyone. Our goal with Fearless is to empower Iowa women to succeed in work and life. And to do that, we believe in the power of inspiration and connection. Since launching Fearless, we've checked in with our audience from time to time about the topics that they feel need to be addressed when it comes to women's and gender issues. And confidence continues to be a prevailing topic that we hear. From imposter syndrome to harmful effects of social media or social norms that we learn as kids, women may be on a continuous journey to improving their confidence. And confidence comes in many forms. Confidence in our bodies, in our intellectual abilities, confidence in our ability to try something new, or confidence in pursuing our goals. And all of those things affect one another. It plays a role in whether we speak up when our voice isn't being heard, whether we negotiate our salaries, and whether we do something that's outside of our comfort zone. What does it mean to empower ourselves or women we know in finding confidence in themselves to work toward professional and personal goals? Today, we're going to have our speakers dig into that. As we frame this conversation, we want to note that confidence is not just an individual issue. We'll get into some of the societal norms and barriers that can affect confidence. Today, we've got a great group of folks here to talk with us about all of this, and they're ready to inspire us. Joining me in moderating is Fearless editor Emily Kestel, who is the engine behind all of our Fearless content and the weekly e-newsletter. If you're not already signed up for the newsletter, we really encourage you to do so. And one quick audience tip for today, the best way to view the program is going to be in speaker mode. All right, so with us today, we have Chelsea Miller-Bailey, the Assistant Director at the Center of LGBTQIA+ Student Success at Iowa State University. We have Cindy Nelson, owner of Hawk's Coffee Shop and Gypsy Soul Boutique in Sergeant Bluff. We have Beth Shelton, the CEO of Girl Scouts of Greater Iowa, and Jilmara Villanova Mitchell, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at IMT Insurance and a leadership coach with Sarah Noel Wilson. So to start us off in the spirit of Fearless, we've asked each of them to share a quick moment that they've been fearless as it relates to confidence. And we would also love if audience members, if you drop your own moment in the chat as well, so that we can all see those. So I'll kick it off with Chelsea to tell us your fearless moment.
Hi, y'all. I'm super excited to be with you today. And mine is actually very fitting and very timely. Today's my last day at Iowa State, actually. So when I was thinking about this, it was just kind of kismet that happened. But my most fearless moment, I would say, is earlier in my career. I quit my job and I was unemployed for 3 months. You may have read maybe some of that back in the fall with some stuff I did with the Business Record and Fearless. But I'm doing it again. And this time, I'm going into an entirely different industry. I'm going from education to tech. And so it's a big change for me and definitely easy to shake my confidence there, but I'm kind of diving in head first. So those are the kind of things that I'm thinking of as I enter today.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on the new job. Cindy, we'll kick it to you.
Okay, can you hear me? All right. Sorry, I'm coming to you live from my car. I volunteered at our Vacation Bible School today, so I'm kind of remote officing. So I would say the thing that I did that was probably resonating with me as being the most fearless was when I did something similar to what she just shared, and I quit my job to follow a new path. I worked Child Protective Services for a really long time, and I loved my job, but I found myself getting worn out, and I didn't want to not be able to give everything that I had. So I decided to quit my job that had benefits and a retirement plan and all of the safety nets that I've been told my whole life I should be striving towards. And I wanted to do something I was more passionate about. And that was something in my community that would allow for me to be more of a part of my community and provide the people in my community with something that they were missing. So I just kind of went all in on that. And, you know, I created a coffee shop and an area in our community for people to connect. And then I started a second business too, and was extra super fearless when it came to, you know, juggling even more balls in the air. So.
Awesome. Thank you. Beth.
Oh, thanks for having me today. I feel like every single day in leadership is an opportunity to practice fearlessness and bravery and courage, because it's so challenging and there's so many uncertainties all the time. So it's hard to think about one. I think in the past year, I had a moment where I wrote really raw feelings about some of the mental health challenges that I faced during the pandemic and through 2021. Some of it was about suicidal ideation, and some of it was about sobriety and alcoholism. And I wrote it on a platform I didn't have a very wide reach, which was on LinkedIn. And within a day, 2 million people had seen it and shared it. And so it was one of those moments, well, I don't think I can put that toothpaste back in the tube. And so be starting to lean into talking a little bit more authentically. But it's not just me, right? I represent a lot of people and a big brand, and those are sensitive topics. So in retrospect, it feels very brave to even start those conversations and continue to have those conversations, because they're really difficult. So that was a moment.
Thank you for sharing. And Jomara.
Hi, thank you for having me. I am also, like Cindy, calling from a unique setting. I am in a hospital today supporting a family member in Colorado. So I apologize, I have to keep my mask on, and you'll hear a beautiful piano player in the background because I am accompanied by him here during the day. So my fearless moment was a career choice that I made a year ago. I had been in my job for 18 years. I loved it, and I had lots of close colleagues, and I just felt it was time to switch. And I applied for one job, and things started developing really well, and I had to make a choice, and I chose to take the chance and switch careers, switch sectors and companies. And so although I still am a DEI practitioner, I went from education to insurance, which is a huge change. I'm learning a lot, and I think it was worth taking the chance. So that was mine.
Thank you all for sharing. That kind of gives us a sense of community, and that we've all kind of gone through some of these things, changing jobs and all that stuff. So that's all what we're about here at Fearless. So to kick our conversation off, I really want each of you to kind of go around and talk about one barrier in particular that you see right now for women and young girls in terms of confidence. And I'll just go in the order of how you are appearing on my screen to make it easy. Chelsea, I'll start with you.
All right, I cannot go first this whole time, y'all. Whew, I feel pressure. So in the work that I do, we talk a lot about systemic barriers to issues. In most of my work, that's related to like racism and sexism and things that LGBTQI plus folks or folks of color are up against when they're in the world. And that's absolutely true for confidence as well, not just for our communities, but honestly for everyone, and women in particular too. There is this sort of prescribed set of rules that we all sort of just follow. They're pretty much unwritten, right? Like, I think we all kind of can think of some of those. I think about like the way I feel like I have to present, the way I feel like I have to talk, the way I don't know, sign my emails and things like that. And those have been around since we've been kids. We just have this really specific set of norms, and nearly all of them are rooted in things like racism and like sexism, classism. And that makes those of us that don't fit within a certain box. And like, it's not easy to succeed in outside of that box. I guess if you're in that box, you succeed. If you're not, it's really hard. And that's what shakes confidence for so many of us, I think. I see it in my students. I've seen it in myself 100%. That because things that feel good for me or feel authentically true to me or what intrinsically motivates me is just a little bit different, I've been made to feel unsure of what paths I've taken and the way that I've walked those paths. And that's true throughout lots of communities. And I think when I think about it, that's really the foundation for me that makes confidence such a difficult thing.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Beth, I'll go to you next.
Okay, wonderful. Well, there are a lot of factors, I think, that impact confidence and those barriers. When we think about the very notion of confidence, it's really hard to isolate and say, you know, we can do a lot of work on ourselves to think through confidence and how to grow that in ourselves. But it's really related to the ecosystem we operate in, because it's in many ways related to how others perceive us. And oftentimes those perceptions are real. It's not, you know, we're not operating in a silo. So I think so many of those barriers are built into that ecosystem. So just taking quite simply gender, right? And of course, this is a topic I get to focus on a lot because I work for the Girl Scouts. So we do a lot of data and work on boys and girls and gender. But across all demographics, all ages for girls, starting in kindergarten, all the way through graduate school, girls test, you know, just objectively as a whole, higher on standardized tests and higher in their GPAs, and yet as a whole, also rank themselves lower as less smart and less capable than their male counterparts. And just thinking through, like, why is that? And often it's that comparison piece that the ecosystem is giving them. So maybe it's the classroom, maybe it's the playground, whatever groups they're part of. And it's when we are in groups where we don't feel othered. And so I had a great mentor say, when do you feel the most, Beth? And those are the moments when you can shine and being the most confident. So sometimes those groups start off really small. Maybe you have 1 or 2 people where you feel the most yourself. But as you get more and more confidence, you can feel more and more like yourself with bigger and bigger groups. So I think, to me, the barrier that we're seeing is that we don't have a lot of those intentional spaces built to allow people to just be themselves without feeling othered or without feeling compared. So much of what we value in society now is a ranking order all the way down to recreational sports, right? Who starts? Who's the top batter? Who's getting, I mean, every weekend tournament, kids are earning rings for being the best, right? So we're ranking kids from the time they start activities in terms of, like, it's built to say this one is better than that one. And so really finding those spaces where kids are not ranked in order, they can just be that, they can be celebrated for being themselves.
Yeah, thank you. Jilmara, do you want to go next?
Sure. For me, I think I agree with everything that was said. And I also think that social media has been a huge issue for young girls, because I think when you are starting to develop your own self-image and your self-esteem, comparing yourself with other people who might have very different lives than you can be very detrimental. And a lot of young girls nowadays spend a considerable time on social media, interacting with other people, and oftentimes end up comparing themselves and their lives and where they live and how they look to the people that they are following on social media. I think that's a huge issue we have right now. I also think in our society, we don't spend enough time teaching young girls to understand what's important for them and how they can live aligned with their truth. Because for me, that was a huge game changer, to learn how to make decisions that are aligned with who I am and what I need and my truth, my values. And as a family, I try really hard to teach my girls to do that. Because I think when you are living aligned with your truth, no matter what the outcomes are, you feel confident about how you're doing things. And I want for them to be able to do that.
Yeah, thank you. Cindy, you want to round us out?
Yeah, I agree. I was going to hit on the social media aspect as well. And I think, we're really in our society right now, women especially, I think it's getting better, but there's still this mindset that in order for me to be successful, that means that somebody else has to be unsuccessful. And I think that kind of ties in with girls' confidence. You're saying, if I don't look exactly like that girl, then clearly I'm not good enough. If I didn't get, as she said, I'm not the number one batter. I'm the first off the bench. I'm not the first starter. I shouldn't have confidence in myself because I'm not as good as that person. It's a conversation I've had with my daughter. My daughter's 14, and we've talked a lot about social media. And she's a really big into sports. But for me to say, you should have just as much confidence as the person next to you. Your best friend is 6 foot and you're 5'5". You're not going to probably be able to get under the boards and rebound as much. However, you're going to be passing it to her. You have to have the confidence to know your role in that system. And I think, in jobs and in work, we kind of say, well, I don't know that I can do that job as good as that person. So therefore I don't have as much value. And I think that does come from when kids are younger. We're teaching them right away. If you're not picked first, you might as well just quit, or maybe you're not as good at reading. So we're going to give these kids awards and we're going to do this stuff, but we need to be, again, kind of switching that goal. And especially for girls, saying, so you might not be as strong as the boys on the playground. However, you have just as much value and you should have just as much confidence, because whatever you're bringing to the table has just as much value. So I think that that's something that social media really, really focuses in on, especially when it comes to girls and their physical appearance. And then we're just kind of compounding on all the issues we've already had as a society when it comes to women.
Thank you all. You all were really touching on some of those societal norms that we see. And I think so often when we hear the term confidence, we think of that as really an individual characteristic, when there are lots of those norms that contribute to that. So I'm just wondering if you all could talk about, what do you think some of the solutions are to addressing those norms, whether that's as an individual or as a community? And maybe we'll start with you, Jomara.
I do think that making sure young girls know that taking risks and leaving your comfort zone is fine to do, and that if things don't turn out the way they expected, they can always learn from it. I think perfectionism is one huge challenge we have when it comes to becoming confident, because we would sometimes teach girls that they have to be perfect at all times to feel value and to feel worth. And I think that teaching people that it's okay to fail, it's okay to take chances, it's okay to leave your comfort zone and learn and try something new. And the results are not what matters the most. It's really the journey and what you're learning through it. And so I think that's one of the things. The other thing that I mentioned is to really understand who you are and what are your strengths and what do you bring to the table, so that you can really use those. And when you're making decisions, when you're connecting with people, self-awareness for me is a huge piece of feeling confident in who you are and communicating that to others. I try really hard as a mom to teach my girls to know how to introduce themselves, how to explain to people what's important for them, to advocate for their needs, and to also be able to understand their mistakes and their failures with a positive outlook, knowing that we all have our difficulties and our challenges, and that's part of who we are, and we can love ourselves even not being perfect.
Beth, I'm kind of curious to know, as this relates to imposter syndrome, again, a lot of times imposter syndrome is really viewed from an individual mindset rather than maybe the barriers that contribute to why more women experience imposter syndrome. So I'm just wondering, what do you think are some solutions to that specific issue?
Yeah, I think the more that we can get objective, I think it's impossible to separate the external factors and the internal perceptions we have about ourselves, right? Because there's gray area and they feed into one another because they're both true. It is true that we can have internal language and dialogue about ourselves that we've learned, from day one, I'm sure, that we're all shaped by. But also it's true that these external factors are real. So to say, I think sometimes we fall in this almost like empowering language of that imposter syndrome is something that women can like overcome, right? It's a thing to be overcome. It's a thing to be controlled. Like you just need to put your shoulders back and lean into who you are. And the truth is often that is being put upon us, right? By the ecosystem we're operating in. So like there are in fact people, external people saying that woman is less qualified because she's wearing this outfit, or she speaks this way, or she looks this way, or she doesn't, fit this norm, or she wore those heels. We're evaluated by all of these numbers, the size of our hips and the size of our heels and the size of our hemline and all of these other things. And that is actually true. So to say that we're not being judged in that way, I think is a little bit short-sighted, or to say that it's just on us to sort of overcome, if you will. I think there's also some irony in the fact that we almost long to fit into the norm. We talk about these social norms and how do we address them and how do we name them? They're not going to go away. By definition, norms will always sort of mean this average, right? So that's never going to go away. It evolves over time. The norms that were true 70 years ago, 50 years ago, 20 years ago are different for women than they are today. And they'll be different again in 10 or 20 years. But so we long to be in these norms, and yet we celebrate those who stand out. So like, I think that's the internal work, to acknowledge that being in the norm is in fact not the victory, but somehow we long for that. And yet we celebrate those women who do stand out. And so I think that's some of the internal work to do as well.
Chelsea, anything you would add to that?
I mean, I'm putting it in the chat. I'm sorry. I like love a chat box at a panel. I could just like retweet everything you just said, Beth. And I think like you're talking about it, in like a broad sense, but I think you articulated better like how my feelings are in relation to like identity specifically as we get into like intersections, right? So folks of color, queer things, those are things I'm always going to talk about because they're identities that are true for me. But I'm sure it is true for many other folks with intersecting identities as well. In terms of that like concept of the norms, and the external pressures and factors that are impacting how we develop confidence, like that's spot on, and then doubled or tripled or quadrupled based on how a person identifies or maybe where that person lives. I think about myself growing up as a person of color, as a Black woman who is queer in central Iowa. Like we can acknowledge that it's not the most diverse place. Like we have some really phenomenal pockets of diversity, but I was often the only person of color in a room. It's incredibly hard to develop individuality even when it's thrust upon you, first of all, but two, like when everyone else maybe has the capacity to adhere to those norms in a way that I can't, my family can't, my identity can't. And so I think that was really confusing for me. And we see that, continued through generations and generations, and the college students that I'm working with on a daily basis. A lot of them have been in environments where that specific place had said, these are the norms in which everyone should aspire to. And then they get into college and like, it's a whole new world, right? Like they're in a whole new space. And it's like, whoa, there are different places where there's different norms or different things to aspire to. But I think the core of it is that like, there doesn't have to be norms. Like the goal, I think for me and my work is like, let's break down the concept of norms of like, I think that's kind of what I pulled from what Beth was saying too. And Beth, I hope I'm not misconstruing anything that was maybe at the core of that, but like, there is this idealized set of things, but like, why? Like, if we all just stopped aspiring to that concept, perhaps that would just change everything. And I know that concept is incredibly idealistic, of course. But I think in a world that I'm dreaming of, that would be something we could all do, is to kind of say like, the concept of all of us wanting the same thing and then working so hard and striving for that and then feeling bad about ourselves if we don't want that or can't get that. I think if we just eradicate all of that, things would be so different. And I think my work for myself, but also in my profession, has been rewriting what that looks like for me, like essentially unsubscribing, right? Like unsubscribing to all of that. And it has radically changed how I feel about myself. It has radically changed how I feel about my environments. It has radically changed how I do my work. And I want that. I want that for other people because it's incredibly freeing.
Awesome. Thank you. So a couple of weeks ago, Emily and I got to go to the Sioux City area, and Cindy was one of the awesome people that we got to meet and talk with. But Cindy, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about, I think part of confidence, and especially with women and having to juggle so many responsibilities, maybe that's starting their own business or the volunteer opportunities or different things that they're involved with, and having so much that they're doing that they lack the confidence in any of those things because they have so much on their plate. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is, I've seen a couple of those memes where it's, like Pinterest fail. And, I'm reminded of that where it's like, oh, I'm like the best cook, right? Like, or I'm going to bake this beautiful cake. And then, I pack snacks for all the kids on my son's soccer team. And then I spent 6 hours creating the scrapbook, of my kids' whatever, like fill in the blank. And so doing all the things, and I think we kind of get, again, with that comparing to others. Okay, well, I'm not that good at this, then that must mean that I'm not good in general. And I think going back to what you guys are saying about norms, I feel like, okay, well, I should be a great cook, or I should be really good at housework because I'm the mom, and I should be really good at whatever. My kids got sick this weekend. I called my mom. And I said, my daughter said to me, well, why are you calling your mom? Why are you calling grandma? And I'm like, well, because you're sick and I don't know what to do. And she's like, but you're a mom. And I was like, I know, but I didn't know like the right cure for what she had going on. But I felt then as soon as she said that to me, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a terrible mom. Because I think, when we're doing all of these things, and I want to do all of these things, right? Like I own 2 businesses. I sit on 5 boards in our community. I'm really striving to be part of city council or the school board. I really want to have a voice, and I want to show my kids that working hard, matters and is valued, and that my opinion matters. And I should be out there, and I should be advocating for the things that I see. I teach classes at a couple colleges here in town, sociology classes. And I'm telling my students that, right? Like I can't just sit back and not advocate for these things that I'm seeing. But because of doing those things, sometimes I fail in other areas. And I think we as women are really good at feeling really crappy about ourselves when we don't fit and we don't do all of the things. And so I'm like super blessed. I have a husband who does the laundry at our house, and he is just like, I'm not ever going to tell you no because you don't listen to me anyways. So I guess I'll just go ahead and pick up the kids from school or do whatever you need me to do so that I can still feel like I'm doing all of those other things. Because I think, when I kind of laugh at the norms, and I'm not saying norms in the way that some of you guys are talking about, because, because my story is a little different. But when I'm talking of, when I'm saying norms as in what society has said for us, I do think that there's some confidence that it takes to say, yeah, I'm like really bad at meal prepping. I'm like really bad at remembering to pack my kids a lunch. And I'm really bad at getting my kids to practice on time. Like those are things about me. My kids know it. My husband knows it. The coach knows it. Whoever's in my life just understands Cindy's got a lot on her plate. She's really doing the best she can. And I have the confidence to say to people, I'm really crappy at some of those things. Doesn't make me a bad mom. Doesn't make me a bad business owner, or a bad wife, or a bad person. I just can't do it all. And I have to put value in the things that I think are impacting my community the most. And my son showing up 15 minutes early to practice sometimes isn't it. So I think that's hard for women to say. And there are many nights I sit at home crying, like I had 15 things on my to-do list and I got 2 done. What am I doing wrong? But when you can just kind of take a step back and say, well, I have the confidence to be crappy today because I did some really great things with my business, even though I maybe missed my son's basketball game or whatever.
Yeah, this is such an awesome conversation. But before we get too in the weeds on stuff, I kind of want to take a step back and just ask you all, what does being confident look like? Or what does it mean to you? We've talked a lot about norms and stereotypes that we have. And I know in my head, when I think of a woman that's confident, I think of someone who can command a room or stands up tall and is loud and knows what she wants, all that stuff. But I guess, what about all of us introverts here? Like, can we be confident too? Like, what does that look like? So I'd really just like each of you to talk a bit about what being confident means and what it looks like. And Beth, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I love that question because I am very introverted and always probably one of the quietest. If I'm not on a stage, right, one of the quietest in a room. So when I think about confidence, I think about having an accurate sense of self, and then when that comes out authentically, when you're expressing that authentically, so not arrogantly more and not meekly less. So having that accurate sense of self and living that authentically in those moments when I'm doing that, that's when I feel confident. It's not when I'm being the loudest or the most in the spotlight. It's when I'm being a true reflection of how I actually am and being accurate about that. So to me, that's what confidence is.
Yeah, thank you. Jilmara, do you want to go next?
Yes, I completely agree. My definition of confidence is knowing who you are and living aligned with who you are. And so in a real way. And I think it doesn't need to be loud. It can be very quiet and very gentle. And I honestly think that confident people have a huge dose of humility too, because otherwise you can be perceived as arrogant. So I think a very important element of confidence is humility and understanding that you suck at some things and embracing the suck and the imperfection and feeling good about it. Like Cindy was talking about, we are all a work in progress. We all have our areas that we have to work on, and we all have beautiful things to share as well. And I think being aware of that and sharing that in an honest way is, to me, what's confidence.
Yeah. Cindy, I'm anxious to hear your opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, sometimes confident people are, the ones that are on the stage and speaking, but I think, you guys are hitting it right on the head. That's exactly how I feel about confidence. It's not that I'm always right about something, but I do feel like I have, if I am going to share my opinion, I think it's because I have an opinion to share. And I think confidence is saying, I also feel like I should be valued and my opinion should matter. It might not be right. But I think that, if you have confidence, you believe in yourself enough to say, I feel like my voice should be heard, and I'm going to, share that. And I think, definitely don't have to be the loudest person in the room, but to know your own worth. And I think there's so many girls and so many women who just don't know their own value.
Yeah. Chelsea, I'll go to you next.
Yes, I would retweet all of that. I feel like I'm glad that we're all on the same page. I really do think it's about self-assuredness, values alignment, some of those things, but I think they've all hit it on the head.
So I've got a quick follow-up to all of this. So we, all of you kind of talked about a strong sense of self and knowing who you are and knowing your worth and knowing your values. But what if you are going through a bit of an identity crisis, or if you're a young girl who doesn't necessarily know her place in the world yet? How do you find who you are, and how do you know your value and your sense of self-worth in the world?
I think for me at least, and I think a lot of folks that I spend time with, so much of that comes from like failing forward to an extent, right? So, I mean, I can think about all of the things that I feel most assured in for myself, and all of those have come from, unfortunately, strife. And I don't think that means you have to struggle to get to a place of confidence per se. I think because of what we're talking about, likely many women especially have maybe struggled, even if that's just with body image or being able to speak up or being self-assured in your opinions. Like, it doesn't have to be, despair by any means. But I do think that being able to have moments where I have felt kind of unsure enough has helped me to figure out what my values are, right? Like, my values have been really consistent throughout my life, but I've become aware of them and assured in them and able to name them because of all the times that they've been up against a wall and I've had to pick between aligning with my values or doing something that felt off. And I've done the thing that felt off enough to know that that doesn't feel good for me. That's what leaves me questioning. That's what makes me feel insecure. But every time that I have leaned towards my values, or if I've failed and then something out of that has caused me to get back on a path towards my values, that's how I've developed enough knowing of self to say, oh, every time that I'm honest, every time that I'm authentic, like, wow, that feels really good. And that's how I figured that out. I think, again, I don't know that that's a requirement by any means, but I do think that if we can help folks see that even in the moments where you've done something that hasn't felt aligned to who you are, or the times that you have messed up and done something that feels super regretful, like there's a lesson in that. And those lessons can apply to like you developing a stronger sense of self and more confidence and assuredness in what you want to be doing, how you want to be acting, what you want to pursue moving ahead.
Yeah, I love that. And I've seen in the chat a lot of people loving the failing forward kind of motif there. But does anyone else have any thoughts on how to find your sense of self in the world, how you know who you are? Beth, do you want to go?
Sure, I'd love to add, something Cindy said earlier was about how women seem to be really good at being hard on themselves. So I want to level set on that question of anyone feeling like, almost like, oh no, I'm having, I don't know who my identity is and I don't have a strong sense of self, oh man, I'm failing at that too. So first of all, I think just the acknowledgement, I can't speak for anyone else, but it's not like I have this thing figured out. It's easy to look at other people and think, oh, great, they all know their sense of self and I don't. So now I'm worse, or, oh man, so I don't think that's the case at all. Certainly for me, I think acknowledging that it's a journey is just part of it. And, in James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, he uses this metaphor that I love about oak trees. And when they are a young sapling and really vulnerable, they don't apologize or shame themselves. Nobody shames a sapling for being a sapling, and it's not considered a bad thing. It's just like, it is what it is. Just name it like, oh yes, that is in fact part of the stage, part of the journey. And then also, it's also true, you can keep growing and keep acknowledging, and then it gets stronger and then it gets stronger. But it's also not a linear path always the way it is with an oak tree. Like with an oak tree, the longer and older it is, the more firm it is, in this case, sense of self. And I know certainly in my case, that's not true at all. The journey can start over all the time. So I do not feel like a strong oak tree, right? I feel like a sapling right now, and that's okay. So just instead of shaming and worrying and another thing to be anxious about, just naming it and being like, oh, great, that's wonderful, because there's a lot of room still to grow and get stronger. And in fact, I will. So I think that's important to call out, that there's no one there. I think that we get, it's definitely part of embracing the journey and not being so hard on ourselves on every step of the journey, but leaning into it and just naming it.
Yeah. Cindy, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that, one of the things we teach in my sociology class is cultural capital, and it kind of is building confidence by where you're born and the experiences that you have, right? So some people, when you say like, you were born with confidence, I mean, technically no, but you could be born into a situation that really has just funneled confidence into you by the way of, maybe parents who, really build you up, or a school that has great teachers and all of these things. And you are on the best sports teams, and you get the opportunities to travel and experience all kinds of things. So then you have confidence when you walk into a room because you've experienced a lot of things and you've navigated through that. And then some people don't have that experience, right? So confidence has to be something that they have to kind of peck away at slowly but surely. And I think that's kind of what everybody here is kind of, hitting on a little bit, is that, sometimes the journey is shorter for people than it is for others. But certainly, I mean, I would have never, if someone had said, oh, you're going to probably be a college professor someday and teaching classes, I'd have been like, absolutely not. I cried in my first speech when I had to give it, in high school, like, oh, I was mortified and, barely made it through. So, being somebody that would stand in front of others to say, I hope I'm in city council someday where I could make a decision that could impact my community. There's not a chance that I would have ever thought that was something I would do. But because you have little successes here, and then little successes, and then a failure, and then maybe a little bit more success, and just kind of trying to navigate, like Chelsea said, I think is 100% accurate, where you just kind of, I think, we just kind of made a comment about how everybody gets a participation medal. And I absolutely hate that. And I know I'm probably not in, the majority on that sometimes, but I just really love it when my children fail at something, when they're not getting, tournament champions every time, or they come home and they didn't get student of the month that month, or they got a B on their homework assignment because they didn't put the time in to study like mom told them to. I really like it when they have those things, because it really does teach them that you have to work hard and you have to keep trying, and failure is part of life. You're not always going to get the job you want. You are not always going to get the boyfriend or girlfriend or partner that you want. You're just not going to be able to do everything that you want to do in life. It's very unrealistic. So learning how to be stronger because of that and keep putting your foot forward are skills I think everybody needs, sometimes a reminder of, like, yes, maybe you did fail at this, but maybe that means that in 6 months from now, you're going to look back and you're going to be a stronger person for it. And that's going to create confidence in your ability to move forward in times of toughness.
Yeah, I love that. Jomara, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just want to add that as we all agree, confidence is an internal process that you develop as you go through life and getting to understand who you are. And we are very fluid. As human beings, we change after each experience we have. And so even though we might think we have it figured out, something happens and then you're a different person who needs different things. And so our identity is really always changing. And the process of getting to know who we are is a long-term one. But I do think that externally, we influence each other a lot by the way we recognize each other's impact on our lives. And so I try very hard every Friday to build in reflecting time on my calendar. And I reflect on the impact I have had that week on the people that surround me, and also try to communicate to others how they have impacted my life. And I try very hard not to focus that on job or outcomes that are related to jobs and titles, but really who the people are. And so I think that if we all do that and lift each other up and recognize what each other brings to our lives as a collective team, we can boost people's self-esteem. And especially when I'm mentoring young leaders, I always say, hey, you are influencing this because of who you are. Have you ever noticed that this is a gift to share with all of us? And I try really hard to be very explicit about that, because I think that we keep building our self-esteem on the connections we have along the way. And that's really important to be intentional about that, how we do that.
I want to ask each of you, what does it look like to build confidence in others? What are some of the concrete actions or affirmations that you have seen that you think work really well? Cindy, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I think I have, I have a couple friends who are small business owners, and I, really just celebrating their successes and understanding their failures, and just knowing that, it does nobody really any good to pile complaints or negativity on. So I think building confidence in other women is extremely important. Saying, like, get it, girl, I know you can do that. And and if you fail, I'm going to be right here to drink wine with you, or a Dr. Pepper, if that's your go-to. I'll be here to support you in failure or success. And really, with my daughter, and I coach her volleyball team. So I have the opportunity to kind of impact lots of different girls who are kind of at that age where they're really impressionable. Building confidence in them means just really saying to them, tomorrow might be better, or I know that you can do this, or you need to find your value. You need to know what your worth is in everything all the time. And I think just reminding girls that comparing to others is never going to be helpful. And one of the things I do for my daughter is I tell her that when she's doing Snapchat or Instagram or anything else, she's allowed to take 2 pictures. She's not allowed to take 42 to try and find the right one. That is what your face looks like, girlfriend. So you can take 2 pictures in case your eyes were squinting, but you need to be confident in the fact that that is what you look like. So if you're going to post a picture, I want it to be an authentic picture of you. And she's learned that when she's with her friends, I hear her say, well, that was our second pictures, girls. That's what the one we have to put up. And just letting her friends know, like, I love what your face looks like. And, the world will too. So if you're going to put it out there, just make sure you only have taken 2 of it, because it's not going to get any better, and you're beautiful just the way you are.
That's a really fun idea. Jomara, what would you say?
I would say, really, I love what Cindy just said. I don't even know if I can add a lot to it, but I think that really expecting that life will be hard, that we all have the resources to deal with our challenges with grace and strength, that, I think a lot of times you communicate to young girls that everything is going to be perfect and it's going to be easy and it's going to be the dream that we watch on TV. And we don't prepare them. We rob them the opportunity to develop skills to navigate challenges. And I think when you can navigate your challenges with grace and confidence, life becomes a lot richer. And so to me is very aligned with what Cindy just shared. It's really preparing people to use their internal resources to navigate their challenges in the best way possible, and know that we are all a work in progress. And it's okay to be a work in progress. We don't need to look perfect. We don't need to be perfect to be loved and to be worth.
Chelsea?
Okay, so two things are coming to mind. The first is in similar alignment. Like in my world, we call that, or like I call that, and my friends do, like giving people their flowers, right? So like we hear that a lot, like when folks are departing jobs, like we've been talking about, or in moments that are very clear, like you might get a bouquet, but like, what if you passed out flowers on like a day-to-day basis and you let people know their value and your appreciation for them whenever? Like that is so important to me. And so I really try to lean into that and making sure that I'm saying thank you and that I'm being clear with my thank you. So often we get feedback, but maybe it's very basic, like, thanks so much, that was great. But like, what was great about it? Could you tell them, like, I really loved how you spoke about this. You were articulate, you were fill in the blank. Those types of things give people stronger context clues and help them to be reassured in the things that you really do value about them and along the way, so that it doesn't have to wait until maybe like a crucial moment where someone's departing a job or has been feeling down for a while. And then this maybe is a little bit different, but it's really applicable in my line of work within diversity, equity, and inclusion. But for me, and there's something in the chat that popped up about it, but accountability is absolutely an act of love. And that is something I preach all of the time. And so for me, when I'm thinking about how I can help folks build confidence, I literally work in education. And so education is really that. And sometimes that education does come with critical feedback. I think someone asked, like, how do you deal with criticism? And I think for me, that has been a lot of discerning between criticism and feedback. And I help build other people's confidence, my peers, my students, my communities, young people, by working with them to educate them on things that they might feel unassured about. We've talked a lot about feeling really certain or not really feeling certain, and that's kind of a difference of confidence or a lack of confidence. So for me, the more that I can educate people when they've asked for it, it's not always just like, hey, by the way, listen to this. But when I have relationships with individuals as a mentor, as a colleague, as a friend, where I can say, and I can say things to them that might feel uncomfortable. It might say, like, let's talk through that thing that was maybe a misstep, and here's maybe how you would do that differently. I think that does help them start to build confidence in how they're able to approach different things. In education, for example, diversity, equity, and inclusion are really important topics right now. Like, we're seeing a more diverse generation that are expressing identities in different ways than maybe we've been comfortable with. And so one of the things that I've seen is that if we don't have the confidence to talk about it, we avoid it. And so for me, helping people to get more educated about how they can approach some of those topics or how they can work with different students or different communities helps them to feel more able and eventually confident to do that on their own. So that's something else that I lean into.
Thank you. And Beth, as far as instilling confidence in others, that's really what you all do at Girl Scouts. So I'm just kind of curious, what are some of the things that you've seen that works really well with the girls that you think maybe we as adults should be doing more of?
Yeah, I love that question because I don't see a big difference. And in fact, data shows there's not a big difference in the ways girls feel about themselves and the way women feel about themselves. There's in fact hardly any difference until mid 40s. That's when we see the data start to shift. After the mid 40s, women tend to start recoup some of that confidence that they had prior to age 10. So there's a pretty big gap in there, right? And so we shouldn't have to wait until like our mid to late 40s to start to feel that confidence, right? So the number one tool that all of our research has shown is getting to experience some level of grit and the ability to overcome. So we can manufacture these scenarios for kids in places like Girl Scouts, right? Where they get stretched a little bit further then they're comfortable. So it could be at a camp, it could be riding a horse, it could be doing a high ropes course, it could be doing a badge in STEM or coding or whatever, but having a safe, supportive environment where they can get pushed a little bit beyond where they were comfortable, doing something they thought they couldn't do. And then in fact, when they overcome, they're building that muscle of, oh, I am capable. I am resilient. I do have grit. So I think where we tend to get stuck, though, as people, is when we start to take external feedback and allow others to have an impact on, when we think about grit and resilience, it's so much about who we are and how we feel empowered. But as soon as we start to let other people, other factors influence that, I think there was a question in the chat earlier about what about when you get criticism, right? And in many ways, I like to think about it and talk to girls about having a yardstick. And then like when you hand your yardstick of self-worth to someone else, it's an unwinnable game. It becomes this field goal that moves all the time and you can't ever win. And so instead of handing someone else your yardstick, instead of asking, when someone gets external feedback and then their confidence gets shook, right? This happens all the time. With adult women, with employees, with peers, with kids, their confidence gets shook. They got some kind of external feedback, maybe from a boss, from a coach, from a friend, from social media, whatnot. Instead of like addressing the thing they got feedback on, like, oh no, your hair's not bad, or your car's not this, whatever that, it's more of the question, what makes you think you should hand your yardstick to that person? Like really getting them to acknowledge the role they played, which is I allowed my self-worth, I handed them my self-worth and let them stomp on it. So really trying to coach them through that piece. Imagine if we could get girls by age 10 to understand that they don't have to hand that yardstick to somebody else, that they could be whole and valued no matter what the external feedback is. Like it's an unwinnable game to get the external feedback, right? Because it's always going to be critical and bad from someone from somewhere. If we could get them to understand that you get to own the yardstick, you don't have to outsource that, that's where we see tremendous value.
Yeah. So I guess, unfortunately, we have 3 minutes left. I could go on for hours about this topic, but just to wrap up, I'd love for each of you to give a brief takeaway from this conversation, or what you like, a last little nugget of information that you want the audience members to take away. And Chelsea, I'll start back with you.
Okay. I think the best thing that I can think of is like, you know you the best, and whatever version of you exists in our world, like, is a phenomenal version of that. Like, that is what I want to see in the world, is more people diving into their uniqueness, into their individuality, and recognizing that the difference of all of us is really what makes the world a really special place. And so I hope that you can develop confidence from a recognition that whoever you are, fully you, wholly you, is remarkable. And I hope we get to see it. So that's what I would leave with.
Yeah, thank you. Cindy, do you want to go next? Brief takeaway.
Yeah, I just want to say, Jenny had put in the chat a question about, criticism, and I think the three of us touched on it. I want to just, I guess the takeaway is I fail every day. People criticize me all the time. They criticize lots of different versions or, different things about my businesses or who I am. I hear gossip. I live in a small town too. And if I had listened to that, I would not have one business, let alone two. I would not be on boards. I would not know the value of my own voice. So it's so much easier said than done. And I still go home and cry when I get a 1-star review. We haven't had one in a long time, but I want to get super defensive, but it's like, okay, well then we weren't what we needed to be for that person. Is there something wrong with the system that I can change that will allow for us to be better? Or is this something that I have to let go? So I don't want anyone to think that I'm sitting, we're sitting here like she said, having it all figured out. So confidence comes one step at a time, one day at a time. And if those guys want to hate, let them hate. Just be fabulous anyways.
Yeah, thank you. Jilmara, brief takeaway.
I think for me, it's that you don't have to know it all. You don't have to look perfect. You don't have to have it all figured out. Confidence is really knowing how to communicate your truth in a way that it's aligned with who you are. Even when that truth is, I am lost right now and I need help. And so that's for me the takeaway. It's really to communicate your truth no matter what.
Love that. And Beth, our grand finale. What's your brief takeaway?
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's hard to, follow all of those. I think in the end, keep questioning what we think is true about ourselves, right? Stay on that path. It's these questions of like, I heard someone say at the gym one day, well, yeah, of course, moms always come last, right? We don't have time for that. And really, does that have to be true? Is it true that moms come last? What if I just chose to work out every day? Or, in my case, I cut all my hair off when I started dressing sassy 2 years ago. Like I had a paradigm of what does it mean to be a female CEO? And then like, is that really true? Is that really like, what if it did look different? And who's to say that that's true? So I think we have these paradigms that we've learned, and continuing to question those and just say like, what would happen if I did change that? And I think that's a great first step.
Awesome. Well, thank you, speakers, for being here and sharing your thoughts. This has been a really great conversation. And we also want to, again, thank our fearless sponsor, Women Lead Change. And thank you for our audience for tuning in today and the great conversation that was happening in the chat, too. If you enjoyed this conversation, we encourage you to join us for our final Fearless Focus event on October 6th at noon, where we'll be talking about risk-taking. And if you're looking for an opportunity to connect with us in person, we recently announced our 2022 Women of Influence class that we'll be celebrating on August 4th. General admission tickets go on sale July 1st. And if you're interested in corporate table opportunities, you can reach out to Chris Konetsky. If you've got story ideas or feedback on today's event, please reach out to Emily Kestel. And we're a locally owned and operated business, and your support helps us continue to do work like this. Reach out to Chris Konetsky if you are interested in advertising and sponsorship opportunities. And finally, we want to leave you with a call to action. We want to encourage everybody to do one thing in the next week that helps you or a woman you know feel confident. Maybe that's giving yourself permission to feel accomplished, even if you didn't get through everything on your to-do list for the day. Maybe that's complimenting someone. Maybe that's volunteering with an organization that works to instill confidence in our youths. But whatever you choose, we hope that you'll do so fearlessly and continue your efforts to empower Iowa women. And we hope you'll consider sharing what you decide to do by emailing Emily Kestel or me. So thank you for attending and have a great day.